On my 65th birthday, my son showed me his phone. $100,000. Transferred. To his mother-in-law. Then he slid an envelope across the table. I opened it with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. A $10 gift card. $10. He smiled. Not warmly, just satisfied, like he'd checked a box, like I was a box to check. It's for groceries, Mom, he said. You know, the scraps. The scraps. I sat there in my small apartment, the same apartment where I'd raised him alone, where I'd skipped meals so he could have seconds, where I'd sewn his school uniforms by hand because new ones cost too much, and I held that card between my fingers like it weighed nothing. Because it did weigh nothing. I looked at him, at the man I'd sacrificed everything for, the man I'd worked double shifts to put through medical school. And I saw a stranger who'd just shown me exactly what I was worth to him. I didn't cry. Not then. I just nodded, said thank you, watched him leave with his wife, Jessica, who didn't even look back. That night, I sat in the dark and stared at that gift card, and something inside me shifted. You see, my son thought he knew me, thought he knew what I had, what I didn't have. He thought I was small, invisible, manageable. He was wrong. 6 months later, I disappeared. Not the way you think. I didn't run away. I didn't beg. I didn't make a scene. I did something better. I bought his neighborhood, you heard that right. The gated community where he and Jessica had just closed on their dream home. I bought the estate 3 doors down, in cash. And when he finally saw me again, standing on my marble balcony, overlooking the life I'd built without him, the look on his face was worth more than any birthday card he could have given me. This is the story of how a $10 insult became the best gift I ever received. Because it woke me up. And what I did next, it changed everything. Stay with me. You'll want to see how this ends. But before I tell you how I disappeared, you need to understand who I was, who I had to become, because none of this makes sense without knowing what I gave up to get here. I became a mother at 23. Young, unprepared, and completely alone. Michael's father left before the first ultrasound. Just vanished. No forwarding address, no child support, no explanations. One day he was there, the next he wasn't. And suddenly I was responsible for a life I hadn't planned for. I had $1,700 in my bank account and a high school diploma. That was it. That's what I had to build a life on. So I took the only stable job I could find, a clerk position at the municipal records office. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't high-paying, but it had benefits, a pension, and it was steady, and steady was all I needed. I worked that job for 42 years. Same building. Same desk by the 3rd floor window that looked out over the parking lot. Same coffee mug with the chipped handle. I watched that parking lot fill and empty, season after season, while I filed documents and processed permits and told myself it was enough. Because it had to be. My apartment was small. 1 bedroom, which Michael got. I slept on a pull-out couch in the living room until he left for college. The carpet was beige and worn thin in the high-traffic areas. The kitchen had exactly 4 cabinets and a stove with 2 burners that worked most of the time. In winter, I could see my breath in the bathroom until the space heater kicked in. But the rent was affordable, and affordable meant survival. I drove the same car for 15 years, a sedan with manual windows and a tape deck. The steering wheel had a groove worn into it where my left hand always rested. The passenger seat had a tear in the vinyl that I covered with a towel. It smelled like old coffee and the Pine air freshener I replaced every 3 months. That car never let me down, and I never let myself want a new one. Every dollar had a job. Groceries, rent, utilities, Michael's needs, savings. In that order, always in that order. I bought day-old bread from the discount rack. I darned socks until they were more patched than original fabric. I cut my own hair in the bathroom mirror using kitchen scissors and a YouTube tutorial. I said no to dinners out, to vacations, to new clothes, to anything that didn't serve a purpose. But for Michael, I said yes. I said yes to things I couldn't afford and figured out how to afford them anyway. Private school tuition starting in 7th grade. because the public school in our district was failing, and he deserved better. I worked weekend shifts for 2 years to cover that. My supervisor didn't understand why I volunteered for Saturday mornings, but I never told him. I just showed up. When Michael was 16, his school offered a student exchange program to Germany. 6 weeks, $3,000. I didn't have $3,000, but I had a credit card I'd never used, and a determination that felt bigger than logic. He came back speaking basic German and talking about universities abroad. He glowed, and that glow was worth every extra shift I picked up to pay off that card. Then came college. State university, not Ivy League, but still expensive. I'd been saving since he was born, putting away $20 here, $50 there, every spare cent that didn't go to keeping us alive. But college eats money like a wildfire eats dry brush. Tuition, books, housing, meal plans, lab fees. It never stopped. I took out a Parent Plus loan, then another. I signed those papers knowing I'd be paying them back until I retired. Maybe longer. I signed anyway. He wanted to be a doctor. How could I say no to that? How could I tell my brilliant, hard-working son that he couldn't chase his dream because his mother couldn't afford it? So I didn't. I worked extra hours. I skipped lunches and ate ramen at my desk. I wore the same 3 work outfits on rotation until the hems unraveled. And I smiled every time he called home excited about an anatomy exam or a clinical rotation. Medical school was worse. 4 more years of tuition, this time doubled. He got some scholarships, thank God, but scholarships don't cover living expenses. They don't cover textbooks that cost $400 each. They don't cover application fees for residency programs or the suit he needed for interviews. I covered those. I always covered those. I remember the night before his med school graduation. I was sitting in my apartment, alone, eating toast for dinner because I'd spent my grocery budget on his graduation gift, a stethoscope engraved with his initials. My hands smelled like the ink from the records I'd been filing all day. That smell never quite washed off. It lived in the creases of my fingers, under my nails, in the grain of my skin. The smell of sacrifice. But the next day, watching him walk across that stage in his white coat, I cried. Not sad tears, proud ones. I'd done it. We'd done it. Every missed meal, every double shift, every birthday I celebrated alone because I was working. It all led to that moment. My son was a doctor. I paid off his student loans 3 months after he finished residency. Every cent he owed, I wired from my savings account. He didn't ask me to, but I wanted to. I wanted him to start his career free, unburdened, with all the opportunities I never had. He thanked me, hugged me, told me he'd pay me back. He never did. I didn't mind. At least I told myself I didn't, because watching him succeed felt like enough. Watching him buy his first house, marry Jessica, build the life I'd dreamed for him, that was supposed to be the payoff. That was supposed to make it all worth it. And for a while, I believed it did. But then something shifted. He started calling less, visiting even less. When I'd reach out, his responses got shorter. Busy with patients, Mom. Can't make it this weekend. Maybe next month. Next month never came. And slowly, quietly, I started to realize something. The son I'd sacrificed everything for had become someone I didn't recognize. Someone who looked at me and saw an obligation, a burden, someone from his past he'd rather forget. He came back successful, wealthy, respected, and different. So different. The changes started small. So small I almost didn't notice at first. Or maybe I noticed and just didn't want to believe it. Michael used to call me every Sunday evening. Like clockwork. 7 o'clock, my phone would ring, and we'd talk about his week, his patients, what he was learning. Those calls were the highlight of my week. Then they became every other Sunday, then once a month. Then texts, short ones. Busy today, Mom. Talk soon. Soon never came. I told myself it was normal. He was building a career. Doctors work long hours. I understood long hours. I'd worked them for him, so I waited. And I texted back, "No problem, honey. Whenever you have time." I always made it easy for him to disappear. Then he met Jessica. She was a pharmaceutical sales rep. Beautiful, polished, ambitious. The kind of woman who wore heels to brunch and knew which fork to use at fancy restaurants. Everything I wasn't. Michael brought her to my apartment once, early in their relationship. I made pot roast, the one dish I knew how to make well. Set the table with my nicest dishes, the ones I'd gotten as hand-me-downs from my aunt. Jessica smiled when she walked in. But it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile you give someone you're already cataloging, taking inventory. I caught her looking at my couch, the one with the faded floral pattern. At my kitchen table with the wobbly leg I'd fixed with a folded napkin. At me, in my dress from JCPenney that I'd owned for 8 years. "This is cozy," she said. Cozy. The word people use when they mean small, when they mean less than. Over dinner, she talked about their plans. The practice Michael was joining, the neighborhood they were looking at. "We're thinking of buying in Riverside Estates," she said, dabbing her mouth with my paper napkin. "It's gated. Very exclusive. You probably haven't heard of it?" I had heard of it. Everyone had. It was where the doctors and lawyers lived, where you needed a 6-figure down payment just to be considered. I smiled and said it sounded lovely. Michael didn't meet my eyes. After that visit, Michael stopped bringing her around. I told myself it was because they were busy, but deep down I knew. I embarrassed him. My small apartment, my discount furniture, my existence. It didn't fit the life he was building. The life she was building for him. When they got engaged, I found out through a Facebook post. Not a call. Not even a text. A photo of Jessica's hand with a diamond the size of a marble and a caption that read, "He said yes." 300 people liked it before Michael called me, 4 hours later, his voice tight. "I was going to call you, Mom. It's just been crazy." The wedding was elegant. Country club venue, 200 guests, open bar. I wore the best dress I owned. A navy blue one I'd bought on clearance specifically for the occasion. Jessica's mother, Linda, wore Chanel. I know because Jessica made a point of mentioning it. "Mom flew to Paris last month just to pick it out," she said, loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. She believes in investing in quality. I sat at a table in the back, near Michael's old college friends who didn't remember me. Linda sat at the head table, next to the couple, laughing and toasting and glowing in her expensive suit. I watched Michael lean over and kiss her cheek. Watched him thank her in his speech for welcoming him into the family with such generosity. He thanked me too. One line. And of course my mom, who's always supported me. Polite applause. Then he moved on. After the wedding, the distance grew wider. They bought the house in Riverside Estates. 5 bedrooms, 3-car garage, a pool. I saw photos on Jessica's Instagram. I wasn't invited to the housewarming party. "It's really just for Michael's colleagues and our close friends," Jessica explained when I asked. "You understand." I did understand. I understood exactly what she meant. The calls stopped entirely. I started reaching out more, trying to bridge the gap. "How are you, honey?" "Thinking about you. Would love to see you soon." His responses were always the same. Busy, patience. Next time. I started to feel like I was begging for my own son's attention. Then I got sick. Nothing serious, just a bad case of pneumonia that landed me in the hospital for 3 days. I called Michael from my bed, my voice raspy, my chest tight. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I left a message. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm in the hospital. St. Mary's. Don't worry, I'm okay, but I thought you should know." He didn't call back. Not that day. Not the next. On day 3, I got a text. "Sorry, Mom, slammed at work. Glad you're okay. I'll send some money for the copay." $200 appeared in my account an hour later. No visit, no call, just money. Like money could replace him sitting next to my bed. Like money could replace him caring. I was released the next morning. I took a cab home alone. That was when something inside me started to crack. Not all at once, just a hairline fracture, the kind you don't notice until it spreads. I tried one more time. I invited him to lunch. A week later, just the two of us. "I miss you," I said when he finally answered. "I just want to see you," he sighed. That sigh said everything. "I'll try, Mom. Jessica and I have been so busy with the house and her family and her family. Not his, hers. We never had that lunch. Months passed. I stopped calling as much, stopped texting first, stopped hoping. I told myself it was fine. He was living his life. I should be happy for him. And I was, mostly. But there was a hollow space growing where his presence used to be. A space that got bigger every time I saw Linda's name in his Facebook comments. Every time I saw photos of him at dinners with Jessica's family. Smiling in ways he never smiled with me anymore. The man who used to call me at midnight to celebrate a small test score now couldn't find 10 minutes to ask how I was. The boy who used to hug me so tight I'd laugh and tell him I couldn't breathe, now shook my hand at family gatherings like I was a distant relative. The son I'd given everything to now treated me like a stranger he was obligated to tolerate. And then came my 65th birthday. I didn't expect much. Maybe a card, maybe a call. I'd stopped expecting grand gestures years ago, but when the doorbell rang that morning, my heart jumped. Maybe he remembered. Maybe this would be different. I opened the door, and there he was. Michael. Jessica beside him, scrolling on her phone. And for just a second, I let myself hope. They came unannounced, and they left me speechless. They didn't hug me when I opened the door. Michael gave me a quick nod, the kind you'd give an acquaintance in a parking lot. Jessica didn't look up from her phone at all. She was typing something, her French manicured nails clicking against the screen. "We can only stay a few minutes," she said, still not looking at me. "We have brunch reservations with my parents." Of course they did. I stepped aside to let them in. Michael glanced around my apartment the way you'd glance at a museum exhibit. Detached, mildly curious, already planning your exit. "Place looks the same," he said. Not warmly, just an observation. A fact, I wanted to say. "Yes, because I've spent every extra dollar on you." But I didn't. I just smiled and asked if they wanted coffee. "We're fine," Jessica answered for both of them. She finally pocketed her phone and perched on the edge of my couch like she might catch something if she sat back. Michael remained standing, his hands in his pockets, his eyes everywhere but on me. "Happy birthday, Mom," he said. Flat, mechanical, like he was reading from a script he'd memorized but didn't care about. "Thank you for coming," I said. And I meant it. Even this, even the cold politeness, was more than I'd gotten in months. I told myself to be grateful, to take what I could get. Then Michael pulled out his phone. "Before I forget," he said, scrolling through something, "I need to show you this." He turned the screen toward me. A banking app. A completed transaction. $100,000. Transferred this morning. To Linda Morrison. I stared at the numbers. 6 figures. More money than I'd ever seen in one place. More money than I'd earned in 3 years of working full time. That's a lot, I said. Because what else do you say? My brain was trying to process why he was showing me this. Why now? Why on my birthday? "Linda's getting a facelift," Jessica said, examining her nails. "A good one costs about that much." Michael wanted to help. "She's been so good to us. So good to us." The word sat in the air like smoke. I looked at Michael, at my son, the one I'd worked weekends for, the one I'd gone hungry for, the one whose loans I'd paid off with money I'd saved for 30 years. He was smiling, not at me, at his phone, at the evidence of his generosity to someone else's mother. "That's very kind of you," I managed to say. My voice sounded far away, like it was coming from someone else's throat. "She deserves it," Michael said, pocketing his phone. "She's always treated me like a son, like a son." Present tense, active, ongoing, not past tense. Not like something that used to happen. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. White, thin, the kind you get from a grocery store display rack. He held it out to me. And this is for you. My hands shook as I took it. I don't know why they shook. Maybe some part of me already knew. I opened it carefully, like it might fall apart. Inside was a plastic card. I pulled it out. A gift card. $10. To a grocery store I didn't even shop at because it was too expensive. I stared at it. At the number 10 printed in the corner. $10. I'd just watched him transfer 100,000. And now I was holding 10. It's for groceries, Michael said. His tone hadn't changed. Still flat. Still detached. You know, for the scraps. The essentials. The scraps. I looked up at him. Really looked at him. Searched his face for some sign that this was a joke, a misunderstanding. Some indication that the son I'd raised, the boy who used to make me Mother's Day cards with glitter and construction paper, was still in there somewhere. But his expression was neutral, bored even, like he'd just completed an errand and was ready to move on. Jessica stood up, smoothing her designer skirt. We should go. The reservation's at 11 and you know how Mother gets if we're late. Mother. Capital M singular. Specific. Not my mother. Just Mother. The only one who mattered, Michael nodded. He was already turning toward the door. Take care, Mom, he said over his shoulder. Maybe we'll see you at Christmas. Maybe. Maybe we'll see you. Like I was an optional side character in his life. Someone he'd pencil in if nothing better came up. The door closed behind them. I heard their footsteps in the hallway. Jessica's laugh at something Michael said. The ding of the elevator. Then silence. I stood in my empty apartment, holding a $10 gift card, and felt something inside me break. Not crack. Not bend. Break. Completely. Irreparably. I looked at the card again. Turned it over. The back was blank except for fine print about terms and conditions. I thought about the envelope still in my other hand. I thought about the phone screen. 6 figures, $100,000. I thought about Linda getting her facelift, about Jessica's French manicure, about Michael's expensive watch, about the word scraps. That's what I was to him. Scraps. Leftovers. An afterthought worth exactly $10. I sat down on my old couch, the one Jessica had been afraid to touch, and I didn't cry. I was beyond crying. I was somewhere else entirely, somewhere cold and clear and sharp, somewhere I'd never been before. I didn't eat dinner that night. I didn't watch TV. I didn't call anyone. I just sat there as the sun went down and the room filled with shadows. And then, at 9:47 p.m., I opened my banking app. I stared at the numbers on the screen. Numbers I'd been watching grow, slowly, painfully, for 42 years. Numbers that represented every sacrifice, every missed opportunity, every single no I'd said to myself so I could say yes to him. That night, I didn't sleep, but I did make a decision, and that decision changed everything. I sat there in the dark, staring at my phone screen, and watched the numbers glow back at me. Numbers I'd been accumulating for 4 decades. Numbers that told a story Michael knew nothing about. $837,412. Let me say that again. $837,000. You're probably wondering how a municipal clerk making $42,000 a year could save that much. The answer is simple. I never stopped. Not once. Not ever. From my very first paycheck, 20% went straight into savings. Before rent. Before food. Before anything. 20%. Non-negotiable. When I got raises, I didn't increase my spending. I increased my savings. When I got my annual bonus, small as it was, it went directly into a high-yield account I never touched. I drove that same car for 15 years because every month I wasn't making a car payment was a month I could save $500. I cut my own hair because $50 at a salon was $50 that could compound over time. I bought day-old bread and generic brands and clearance rack clothes because every saved dollar was a future dollar I might need. But it wasn't just about being cheap. I was strategic. I read books from the library about investing. I learned about index funds and compound interest and tax-advantaged accounts. I maxed out my government retirement plan every single year, even when it hurt. I put money into Roth IRAs and municipal bonds and dividend-paying stocks. I lived like I made minimum wage, so I could invest like I understood what money could become. Michael never asked about my finances, never wondered how I paid his tuition, his loans, his expenses. He assumed I was broke, that I was barely scraping by, that the $10 gift card was somehow appropriate for someone who had nothing. He was wrong. I had everything. I had options. I had security. I had freedom he couldn't imagine. And I'd had it all along, hidden in accounts he never knew existed, growing quietly while he stopped calling, while he chose Jessica's family over me, while he reduced me to scraps. Sitting there in the dark, something clicked. A switch flipped. For 42 years I'd saved for security, for emergencies, for Michael's future. I'd denied myself everything because I thought sacrifice was the same as love. I thought making myself small would somehow make him grateful. But gratitude doesn't come from sacrifice. It comes from respect. And Michael didn't respect me. He pitied me. Or worse, he'd forgotten me entirely. So I made a decision. Right there. At 9:53 p.m., still holding that $10 card. I decided I was done being invisible. Done being small. Done waiting for my son to remember I existed. I was going to make my money work for me. Not for him, not for anyone else. For me. I opened my banking app fully, navigated to my savings account, and transferred $50,000 into checking. $50,000. Just like that. The transaction took 3 seconds. My hands didn't shake this time. They were steady, clear, certain. Then I opened my laptop. I hadn't used it in weeks, maybe months. The screen glowed to life and I started searching. Financial advisors, investment consultants, people who could help me turn my $800,000 into more, into something visible, into something undeniable. I found a firm downtown, highly rated, specializing in retirement planning and wealth management. I filled out their contact form at 10:37 p.m. subject line. New client inquiry. Significant portfolio. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I kept going. I searched for personal trainers. I was 65, but I wasn't dead. I found a woman who specialized in strength training for older adults. I booked a consultation for the following week. Next, a stylist. Not a salon, a personal stylist. The kind of person who helps you build a wardrobe that doesn't come from clearance racks. Someone who could teach me how to dress like I mattered. I found one with an online booking system and reserved a 2-hour session. I was spending money I'd never allowed myself to spend, and it felt terrifying. But it also felt right. Necessary. Like I was finally giving myself permission to exist in full color instead of grayscale. By midnight, I'd sent 4 consultation requests, scheduled 3 appointments, and transferred another $20,000 into a separate investment account. I opened specifically for real estate opportunities. I didn't know what those opportunities would be yet, but I knew I wanted options. The $10 gift card sat on the table next to me. I picked it up one more time, turned it over in my hands, and then I did something I never thought I'd do. I tore it in half, then in half again, and again until it was confetti, until it was nothing. I swept the pieces into my trash can and closed my laptop. For the first time in 42 years, I went to bed feeling powerful. Not bitter, not sad. Powerful. Like I'd finally woken up from a long, exhausting dream where I'd convinced myself that being small was the same as being good. I wasn't going to confront Michael. Not yet. Confrontation is loud and messy and desperate. I didn't need that. I needed something better. I needed him to see me, really see me. Not as the woman in the shabby apartment who took his scraps with a smile, but as someone who had choices, someone who had value, someone who didn't need his validation to exist. 2 months later, they would see me very differently. And by then, it would be too late for apologies. The financial advisor called me back within 12 hours. His name was Richard, and he sounded surprised when I told him my portfolio size over the phone. "Mrs. Chen," he said, "with this amount you have significant opportunities. Let's talk about what you want your money to do." What did I want my money to do? For 42 years, I'd wanted it to sit quietly and keep me safe. Now I wanted it to work, to grow, to give me options I'd never allowed myself to consider. We met twice a week for a month. Richard taught me things I'd only half understood from library books. Asset allocation, tax loss harvesting, real estate investment trusts, municipal bonds versus corporate bonds, risk tolerance versus growth potential. I took notes in a spiral notebook like I was back in school, and in a way I was learning a language I should have mastered decades ago. We restructured my entire portfolio, moved money out of low-yield savings accounts into diversified index funds, set up quarterly dividend payments that would give me passive income, created a separate real estate fund with $200,000 earmarked specifically for property investment. Richard kept saying, "Are you sure?" And I kept saying yes. I'd never been more sure of anything. But the financial transformation was only part of it. I knew that looking at numbers on a screen wouldn't change how Michael saw me. Wouldn't change how I saw myself. So I focused on the other parts. The visible parts. The parts I'd neglected for so long I'd forgotten they mattered. The personal trainer's name was Maria. She was 60 herself, lean and strong, with silver hair she wore in a practical ponytail. She didn't treat me like I was fragile. On our first session, she had me doing bodyweight squats, modified push-ups, resistance band work. "You're stronger than you think," she said when I wanted to quit after 20 minutes. "Your body just forgot. We're going to remind it." 3 times a week, I showed up at the gym at 6 a.m. I learned to use machines I'd walked past for years. I learned that strength wasn't just physical, it was mental. Every rep I finished was proof I could do hard things. Every morning I showed up was evidence I was worth the effort. My body started to change. Not dramatically, not like some movie montage. But I stood straighter, moved with less hesitation. My clothes fit differently. I felt solid, present, real. Then came the stylist. Her name was Vanessa, and she met me at a boutique I'd never dared enter before. "First," she said, "we're throwing out the rule book about age-appropriate dressing. You're 65, not dead. You can wear color, structure, things that actually fit." She pulled pieces I never would have chosen. A tailored blazer in deep emerald, slim black pants that didn't bag at the knees, a silk blouse the color of wine, modern leather boots with a low heel. She taught me about proportions, about how clothing should skim the body rather than hide it. "You've been dressing like you're apologizing for existing," she said, not unkindly. "Stop apologizing." I bought 12 pieces that day, spent $3,000 without flinching. Each item felt like a small rebellion, a refusal to be invisible anymore. The haircut came next. I'd been trimming my own hair for so long I'd forgotten what a professional cut looked like. The stylist, a young man named David, studied my face in the mirror. "You've got good bone structure," he said. "Let's show it." He cut 6 inches off, added layers, shaped it into something modern and intentional. When he spun the chair around to show me the final result, I barely recognized myself. I looked current, polished, intentional. I started wearing makeup again. Not much. Just enough to look awake, alive. Mascara, a touch of blush, lipstick in a shade that wasn't invisible nude. Small things, but they added up. People started noticing. Coworkers did double takes. "Emily, you look amazing," they said. "What's your secret?" I smiled and said, "Just taking care of myself." But the real secret was simpler. I'd stopped shrinking. I'd stopped making myself smaller to make everyone else comfortable. Then I called a real estate agent. Her name was Patricia, and she specialized in luxury properties. When I told her my budget, there was a pause. You're serious? She asked. Dead serious, I said. I want something impressive. Something in a gated community. Something that says I've arrived. Patricia scheduled showings for the following week. We looked at 17 properties in 3 days. Modern estates with floor-to-ceiling windows. Colonial revivals with circular driveways. Mediterranean villas with courtyards and fountains. Each one was beautiful. Each one felt like someone else's dream. Then we drove to Riverside Estates, the same gated community where Michael and Jessica lived. Patricia didn't know the connection. I hadn't told her. She just thought it was another neighborhood on our list. There's a property here that just came on the market, she said. It's been sitting for 6 months because the price point is high. But it's stunning. We pulled through the gates, drove past manicured lawns and brick mailboxes and houses that looked like they belonged in magazines, and then we turned onto Sycamore Lane. 3 houses down from the turn, Patricia slowed. That one, she said, pointing. It was beautiful. 2 stories, cream-colored stone, black shutters, a balcony overlooking the front yard. Mature trees, a circular driveway, an attached 3-car garage, elegant without being ostentatious, substantial without being showy. And 3 doors down I could see another house. Smaller. Newer. With a red front door and a Tesla in the driveway. Michael's house. Can we see inside? I asked. Patricia smiled. Absolutely. The interior was even better. Marble entryway, open concept living spaces. A kitchen with an island the size of my current living room. 4 bedrooms. A finished basement. A back patio that overlooked a private yard. Everything was move-in ready. Freshly painted. Professionally staged. Perfect. The asking price is $1.5 million, Patricia said carefully. But the seller is motivated. It's been listed for months. I think we could negotiate. I walked through every room slowly. Imagined myself living here. Imagined Michael driving past. Imagined him realizing, understanding, seeing me as something other than the woman in the cramped apartment who accepted scraps. I'll offer $1.44 million, I said. Cash, no inspection contingency. 30-day close. Patricia's eyes widened. Cash? Cash. She pulled out her phone immediately. Started drafting the offer right there in the living room. I stood on the empty balcony and looked down the street. 3 houses away. Close enough to be unavoidable. Far enough to maintain dignity. 2 days later, Patricia called. They accepted, she said, her voice giddy. Congratulations, Emily. You're a homeowner. I sat down at my kitchen table in my small apartment and smiled. Then I wrote the check. In cash. The closing happened faster than I expected. When you're paying cash, there's no mortgage approval to wait for. No bank appraisals. No underwriting delays. Just paperwork, signatures, and a wire transfer that made my 42 years of saving disappear in seconds. We sat in the title company's conference room on a Thursday morning. Me, Patricia, the seller's agent, and a closer named Susan, who walked me through each document with practiced efficiency. Sign here, initial here, date here. The stack of papers was 3 inches thick, my hand cramped by the end. When it was done, Susan slid a folder across the table. Inside were 2 keys on a silver ring and a deed with my name printed at the top, Emily Chen, owner. Congratulations, she said, smiling. You're officially a homeowner in Riverside Estates. Patricia hugged me in the parking lot. I've been doing this for 20 years, she said, and I've never seen a smoother transaction. Most people agonize for months. You made a decision and executed it in 3 weeks. That's impressive. I thanked her, got in my old car with the worn steering wheel, and drove to my new house. My house. The words felt foreign and thrilling at the same time. I parked in the circular driveway and just sat there for a moment, looking at the creamstone facade, the black shutters, the balcony where I'd imagined myself standing. It was real now, not a fantasy, not a revenge plot. Real. I walked through the empty rooms slowly, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. The afternoon light came through the windows in golden strips, Every room smelled like fresh paint and possibility. This wasn't just a house. It was proof. Proof that I'd been building something all along, even when no one was watching. Proof that sacrifice didn't mean erasure, but buying the house was only the first step. I didn't want to just live here. I wanted to live here well. I wanted every detail to be intentional, elegant, undeniable. So I hired an interior designer. Her name was Claire, and she specialized in what she called quiet luxury. Nothing loud. Nothing ostentatious, just quality materials, timeless pieces, and careful curation. Think of it like this, she said on our first consultation. Every item should be beautiful and functional. Nothing is just for show. We spent 2 weeks selecting furniture, a sofa in charcoal linen, a dining table made from reclaimed oak, bookcases that reached the ceiling, artwork from local galleries that added color without screaming for attention, a bed with an upholstered headboard in soft gray, rugs that felt substantial under bare feet, lamps that cast warm, flattering light. Claire handled everything. Deliveries, placement, styling. I wrote checks without hesitation. $30,000 for furniture, $8,000 for window treatments, $5,000 for art and accessories. I'd spent 4 decades saying no to myself. Now I was saying yes, and it felt like breathing after being underwater too long. I hired a landscaping company to refresh the yard. They planted hydrangeas along the front walk, replaced the mulch, trimmed the hedges into clean lines. The lawn, already decent, got aerated and overseeded. Within 2 weeks, the exterior looked like it belonged on a magazine cover. Then I hired a housekeeper. Not for cleaning, though she did that too, but for maintenance, for keeping everything pristine. Her name was Rosa, and she came twice a week. She kept the windows streak-free, the floors gleaming, the surfaces dust-free. I wanted the house to look effortless, like I'd always lived this way. Every decision I made had a single goal: to present a version of myself that was undeniable. Not flashy, not desperate for attention, just quietly, powerfully, unmistakably present. But I also made rules for myself. Boundaries I wouldn't cross, even though part of me wanted to. Rule 1. No gloating. I wasn't going to post photos on social media, wasn't going to send Michael pictures, wasn't going to drop hints or brag. That would cheapen it, make it seem like I needed his validation. I didn't. I just needed him to see me. Rule 2. No confrontation. I wasn't going to show up at his door or ambush him at work or orchestrate some dramatic reveal. Drama was Jessica's style, not mine. I wanted the discovery to be organic, natural, unavoidable. Rule 3. Maintain dignity. No matter how he reacted, I wouldn't stoop, wouldn't mock him, wouldn't throw his words back in his face. I would simply exist in my new reality and let that speak for itself. These rules mattered. Because this wasn't about revenge. Not really. Revenge is loud and messy and leaves everyone feeling dirty. This was about reclamation. About refusing to be invisible anymore. About proving to myself more than anyone that I had value beyond what I could give away. 2 months after I moved in, the house was perfect. Every room furnished, every detail considered. I'd learned the neighborhood rhythms. Morning joggers at 6, dog walkers at 7, lawn services on Wednesdays, trash pickup on Fridays. I'd waved to neighbors, attended the homeowners association meeting, integrated myself into the fabric of Riverside Estates, and I'd seen Michael's house. From a distance. I'd driven past it on my way to the main gate, watched the Tesla come and go, seen Jessica out front once, talking on her phone, gesturing animatedly. They had no idea I was 3 doors down, no idea their world and mine now overlapped, but I hadn't reached out. Hadn't made myself known. I was waiting for the right moment, the inevitable moment. Then one Saturday morning, I was standing on my balcony with coffee, looking out over the quiet street, when I saw him, Michael, walking down the sidewalk with a golden retriever I didn't know he had. He was wearing running clothes, earbuds in, looking at his phone as he walked. He passed right by my driveway. Didn't look up. Didn't notice the new car in the garage, the furniture visible through the windows, the woman standing on the balcony watching him. My heart pounded. Part of me wanted to call out, to wave, to make him see me right then, but I held back, because the right reveal wasn't me chasing him, it was him discovering me. So I waited, and the next week I made my move. I sent a text, simple, direct. The first text I'd sent him in 3 months. "Hi, Michael. I'd love to see you. Are you free for coffee this Saturday? I have something to show you." He responded 6 hours later. "Sure, where?" I gave him my address. He didn't recognize it at first. Just said, "Okay, what time?" 10 a.m., I replied. He sent back a thumbs-up emoji, and that was it. The trap was set. Not a trap, really. Just an invitation, a chance for him to see what he'd missed, what he'd underestimated. I spent the week preparing, made sure the house was immaculate, bought fresh flowers for the entryway, planned a simple coffee service with pastries from the French bakery downtown. Nothing excessive, just enough to show that I knew how to live well. Friday night, I couldn't sleep. Not from nervousness, from anticipation. I kept imagining his face when he pulled up, when he realized, when the woman he'd dismissed, the mother he'd reduced to scraps, opened the door to a home that cost more than he'd probably make in 5 years. I wasn't doing this to hurt him. I was doing this to be seen. And on Saturday morning, at exactly 10 a.m., I stood in my marble entryway and waited for the doorbell to ring. This was it. The moment everything changed. At 9:58, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I was standing on the balcony, coffee in hand, watching, waiting. The Tesla. Of course it was the Tesla. Michael stepped out first, looking at his phone. Then Jessica emerged from the passenger side, already scanning the house with narrowed eyes. They walked to the front door slowly, confused. I could see it in their body language. The hesitation, the double-checking of the address. Jessica said something to Michael, gestured at the house. He shrugged, rang the doorbell. I counted to 5. Then I walked downstairs, took a breath, and opened the door. "Hi," I said, calm, neutral, like this was the most natural thing in the world. Michael's face went blank, not angry, not happy, just blank, like his brain was trying to process information that didn't make sense. "Mom?" he said. "What are you doing here?" "I live here," I said simply. "Come in." Jessica's mouth opened slightly. She looked past me into the entryway, at the marble floors, the chandelier, the console table with fresh flowers. "You live here?" she repeated, like I'd spoken a foreign language. "I do." I stepped aside. "Please, come in." They walked in slowly, like they were entering a museum exhibit. Michael kept looking around, his eyes moving from the floors to the staircase to the living room visible beyond the hall. Jessica's heels clicked on the marble. She wasn't talking. For once, Jessica had nothing to say. "Coffee?" I asked. "I have some pastries from that French bakery downtown." "The one you mentioned loving, Jessica." She didn't answer, just stared. I led them to the dining room, where I'd set up a simple coffee service. French press, real cream, croissants, and pain au chocolat arranged on my new serving platter. I poured 3 cups like I was hosting a book club, not confronting my son with evidence of a life he didn't know existed. "Mom," Michael finally said, sitting down heavily. "What is this?" "This is my home," I said, sitting across from him. "I bought it 2 months ago." "Bought it?" Jessica's voice was sharp now, accusatory. "How did you buy this? This neighborhood, these houses cost $1.44 million, I said calmly. "I paid cash." Silence. Complete silence. Michael looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Jessica's face cycled through disbelief, shock, and something that looked uncomfortably like panic. "You don't have that kind of money," Michael said slowly. "You live in that apartment. You drive that car. You work as a clerk." "Worked," I corrected. I retired last month. And you're right. I did live in that apartment. I did drive that car. Because I was saving. Investing. Building something you never asked about. You never told me, he said, and now there was an edge to his voice. Defensiveness. You let me think you were struggling. You assumed I was struggling, I said. You never asked. You just decided I was poor, powerless, and pathetic, and you treated me accordingly. Jessica stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is manipulation, she said. You bought a house here to embarrass us, to make us look bad. I looked at her calmly. I bought a house here because it was a good investment. Because I liked the property. Because I could. Your proximity is coincidental. Coincidental? Michael's voice rose. We're 3 doors down. You knew we lived here. I did, I admitted. And I bought it anyway. Because I'm allowed to live where I want. Just like you are. He stood now too, his face flushed. So what is this? Revenge. Punishment. You're showing off because I gave you a gift card you didn't like? A $10 gift card, I said quietly. After I watched you transfer $100,000 to Linda. You called me scraps, Michael. You reduced me to leftovers. Not because I was poor, but because you decided I was worthless. I didn't say worthless. You didn't have to. I stood, met his eyes. You showed me. With every missed call, every canceled visit, every year you chose Jessica's family over yours. I got the message. Jessica grabbed her purse. We're leaving. This is insane. You're welcome to leave, I said. But understand something. I didn't do this to hurt you. I did this to show you who I actually am. Someone who saved for 42 years. Someone who invested wisely. Someone who had options you never imagined. I'm not asking for apologies. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to see me. Michael stared at me. For the first time in years, really stared. And I saw something crack in his expression. Not quite guilt. Not quite shame. But recognition. Like he was seeing me for the first time as an actual person. Not a convenient character in his past. I need to go, he said finally, his voice hollow. Okay, I said. They left without another word. I watched from the balcony as they got in the Tesla, as Jessica's hands moved in angry gestures, as Michael sat motionless behind the wheel. They pulled out of my driveway, and I watched them disappear down the street. I stood there for a long time. Not triumphant, not devastated, just still, present, real. He'd stormed away, but the story wasn't over, not even close. 3 weeks passed in silence. No calls, no texts, no drive-bys that I noticed. I settled into my new life, my new routines. Morning walks through the neighborhood, coffee on the balcony, books I'd never had time to read. I wasn't lonely. For the first time in years, I was content. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. Jessica. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. Hello? Emily. Her voice was different, smaller. Can we talk? In person? We met at a cafe halfway between our houses, neutral territory. She was already seated when I arrived, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. She looked tired, no makeup, hair in a simple ponytail. This wasn't the Jessica I knew. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. I ordered coffee and waited. I'm pregnant, she said abruptly. 12 weeks. We found out a month ago. I felt something shift in my chest. A grandchild. Despite everything, a grandchild. Congratulations, I said, and I meant it. She nodded, looking down at her tea. Michael doesn't know I'm here, but I needed to tell you, and I needed to say something else. She looked up and her eyes were red-rimmed. I'm sorry. For how I've treated you. For the comments. For making you feel less than. I was insecure and awful, and I'm sorry. I hadn't expected this. Jessica didn't apologize. Jessica didn't show vulnerability. But here she was, doing both. Why now? I asked quietly. Because I'm terrified, she said, her voice breaking. I'm about to be someone's mother. And I keep thinking about how I treated you, how I'd feel if my child's spouse treated me that way. It's eating me alive." I reached across the table, covered her hand with mine. "Being scared means you're paying attention," I said. "That's a good start," she cried then. Not dramatically, just quiet tears that she wiped away quickly. "Will you be part of this baby's life?" she asked. "Even after everything?" "Yes," I said. No hesitation. "Yes." 2 days later, Michael called. "Can I come over?" he asked. "Alone?" He showed up at 6 p.m., looking like he hadn't slept. I made tea, and we sat in my living room. This space that had shocked him weeks before now, just a backdrop for something more important. "I don't know how to start," he said finally. "Start anywhere." I said, "I'm ashamed." The words came out rough, raw, of how I treated you, of who I became. Jessica's pregnant, and all I can think about is what if my kid grows up and treats me the way I treated you? What if I become disposable to them? "You won't," I said, "because you're recognizing it now. You're choosing differently." "I chose appearances over you," he said. "I chose Linda and her money and her status because it made me feel successful, important, and I convinced myself that you didn't need me. That you were fine, that the small apartment and the old car meant you were content with less." "I was content," I said, "but not because I had less, because I chose less so you could have more. You mistook my sacrifice for lack of ambition, for settling. You never asked what I wanted. What did you want?" he asked, looking at me like he was really seeing me for the first time. "To be seen," I said simply. "To matter, not for what I could give you, but for who I am." He cried then. My son, the successful doctor, sat in my living room and cried. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he said. "For all of it." The gift card was unforgivable. The years of neglect were worse. "I don't know if I can fix this." "You can't fix the past," I said, "but you can choose the present. You can choose to show up, to see me, to let your child know me. That's enough. It didn't happen all at once. Rebuilding trust never does. But slowly, incrementally, things changed. Michael started texting me weekly, then calling. We had lunch every other week. He asked about my life, my investments, my routine. Really asked, really listened. Jessica invited me to doctor's appointments. The ultrasound where we saw the baby's profile. The anatomy scan where we learned it was a girl. Each visit, she was softer, more open, less performative. Pregnancy had stripped away the armor she'd worn for so long. Linda, of course, was a different story. She tolerated my presence at family gatherings, but never spoke to me directly. I didn't push it. Some people need to hold on to their resentment. That was her choice, not my problem. Then, in early March, at 37 weeks, Jessica's water broke. Michael called me from the hospital at 2 a.m., his voice tight with panic. "She's bleeding. They're taking her for an emergency C-section. Can you come?" I threw on clothes and drove to the hospital, sat with Michael in the surgical waiting room while Jessica was in the OR. He held my hand like he was drowning, and I was solid ground. "What if something happens?" He kept saying. "She's strong," I said. "The baby is strong. They're both going to be fine," and they were. 40 minutes later, a nurse came out and said, "It's a girl. 6 pounds 8 ounces. Mom is recovering. Both are healthy." Michael collapsed into me, sobbing with relief. I held him. This man I'd raised. This person who'd hurt me and was learning to do better. And I felt something in me soften. Not forgiveness, exactly. Something bigger. Acceptance. Understanding. Grace. They led us into the recovery room an hour later. Jessica was pale but smiling, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a pink and white striped blanket. "Come meet her," she said softly. I walked over, looked down at the smallest face I'd ever seen. Dark hair. Scrunched features. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. "Her name is Emily," Michael said quietly. "If that's okay with you," I looked at him. At Jessica. At this tiny human they'd named after me. "It's more than okay," I whispered. Jessica handed her to me. I held my granddaughter, felt her tiny weight, her warmth, her realness, and I felt everything shift. The anger I'd carried, the hurt, the need to prove myself. It all became smaller, less urgent, compared to this, to new life, to second chances, to the possibility of doing better. Hi, Emily, I whispered to her. I'm your grandmother, and I'm going to make sure you always know you're valued, that you matter, that you're more than what you can give. The baby made a small noise, like she was listening, like she understood. Michael stood next to me, looking down at his daughter. Thank you, Mom, he said, for not giving up on me. I'm your mother, I said. I never could. The $10 card had pushed me to claim myself, to stand up, to refuse invisibility. But this child, this tiny person named after me, made me choose grace, made me choose healing over being right, made me choose the messy, complicated work of rebuilding over the clean satisfaction of permanent distance. Victory, I realized, wasn't about the house or the money or the shocked look on Michael's face. Victory was this: holding my granddaughter, watching my son grow into someone better, choosing to be present for what came next. Linda still barely spoke to me at family dinners. But that was okay. Not everyone gets redeemed in every story. Some people stay bitter. That was her burden, not mine. What mattered was this: I was seen, I was valued, and I was here, holding the next generation, teaching her without words that she would never be scraps to anyone, especially not to herself. It's been 2 years since that birthday, 2 years since the $10 gift card that changed everything. I'm 67 now, and my life looks nothing like it did then. I still live in the house on Sycamore Lane. Michael and Jessica live 3 doors down with little Emily, who's walking now, talking in full sentences, and calls me Grandma M. We have dinner together twice a week, sometimes at their house, sometimes at mine. Linda still attends these dinners. She's polite now, civil even, but there's a distance she maintains. Some wounds don't fully heal, and that's okay. I don't need her approval anymore. Michael is different too. Not perfect, still busy, still occasionally forgetful about calling, but present in ways that matter. He asks about my investments, listens when I talk about my book club or my volunteer work at the library. He introduces me to his colleagues as his mom, not as an obligation. And when little Emily runs to me at family gatherings, I see him watching with something that looks like gratitude. Jessica and I have coffee every month, just the 2 of us. She's become something unexpected, a friend. She still has her moments of vanity, her obsession with appearances, but motherhood has softened her edges. She tells me things she doesn't tell others. Her fears about being a good mother, her regrets about how she treated me, her struggles with Linda's impossible standards. The house itself has become more than a statement. It's a home, a place where I host holidays, where my granddaughter learns to bake cookies, where I finally allow myself to exist fully. The marble floors and the elegant furniture aren't about proving anything anymore. They're just the backdrop for a life I chose instead of one I settled for. But here's what I learned through all of this, and it's what I want you to hear. Self-worth isn't something someone gives you, it's something you claim. For 42 years, I waited for Michael to see my value, to acknowledge my sacrifices, to validate my existence, and in that waiting, I made myself smaller. I accepted scraps because I thought that's what I deserved. I was wrong. You are not defined by how others treat you. You're defined by how you treat yourself. And the moment I decided I was worth more than a $10 gift card, everything changed. Not because I bought a house or transformed my appearance, but because I finally believed I mattered. Money isn't the point of this story. It's not about having $800,000 in savings or buying an expensive house. It's about having options, security, the ability to choose your life instead of just enduring it. I saved for decades not to be rich, but to be free. And that freedom gave me the power to say, I deserve better. So here are 3 things I want you to take from my story. 1. Save something. Anything. Even if it's $20 a month. even if it feels pointless. Compound interest is real, and small amounts over long periods become significant. I started with almost nothing, and I built security one paycheck at a time. You can too. Educate yourself about money, about investing, about what's possible. I spent 40 years thinking my savings account was enough. It wasn't until I learned about index funds and real estate and diversification that my money started truly working for me. Knowledge is the difference between surviving and thriving. 3. Set boundaries. With everyone, even people you love, especially people you love. I spent decades accepting less than I deserved because I was afraid of conflict, afraid of seeming difficult, afraid of losing my son. But boundaries aren't walls. They're foundations. They're how you teach people how to treat you. The $10 gift card sits in a frame on my desk now, not as a trophy, as a reminder that sometimes the most painful moments are the ones that wake you up, that push you to claim the life you've been building in secret. At 67, I didn't just buy a house. I bought the right to be seen, to exist fully, to stop apologizing for taking up space, and that was worth more than any check I could have written. If you've ever felt invisible, undervalued, or reduced to scraps by someone you loved, I want you to know something. You are not small. You are not disposable. You are not an afterthought. You are valuable exactly as you are, and you deserve to be treated that way. Don't wait for someone else to recognize it. Claim it yourself. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. Leave a comment below telling me one thing you've sacrificed for someone else, or one boundary you need to set, or just one word describing how this made you feel. I read every single comment, and your stories matter to me. If you're new here, subscribe. Hit that notification bell. I share stories like this every week, stories about real people who refuse to stay invisible, who chose themselves, who reclaimed their lives. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's been making themselves small, someone who deserves to know they're worth more than scraps. And if you want to know what happened next, if you want to hear about the family gathering where everything finally came together, or the moment Linda finally spoke to me directly, let me know in the comments. Your engagement tells me what stories to tell next. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for seeing me. Because being seen, that's everything.